Hi, I'm Steve McIntyre, an audit partner at Ernst & Young.
And I'm Chris Jerome, a tax partner at Ernst & Young.
EY is a proud sponsor of this year's Lifetime Achievement Award. At EY, we've continued to support our clients and local business leaders to help them through these challenging times. And this evening, we're extremely excited to be part of this annual celebration of Ottawa's business leaders.
Despite the challenges in the last 8 months, we continue to be inspired by business leaders that have not only survived, but have been finding opportunities for growth. If you have any questions about your business, or if you'd like to discuss potential growth opportunities, please reach out to us.
So Rob, congratulations.
Thanks, Mark.
And let's go back to the beginning, because you were at the University of Ottawa, not far from where we're sitting
That's
right
right,
now.
yeah, around the corner.
And
Going to a
playing
few
basketball.
classes. Yep.
And did you say going to a few
Going
classes?
to a few classes, yeah.
That's good. Did you ever imagine having this kind of career?
No, to be frank with you. I was, at the time, pretty serious basketball player, I like to say. Realized that about third year that wasn't going to get me very far, and got serious about my schoolwork and became a CPA. But I must admit, I never really imagined I'd get so involved in the business community as I have. Been a pleasant surprise.
So when you look back on your run at Cognos, what are some of the memories that come to mind, especially maybe from the early days before people got to know it as this Canadian powerhouse in the software industry?
Yeah, I mean, Mark, in the early days, there weren't many software companies. IBM in the 70s had separated software from hardware in response to Department of Justice antitrust legislation. And so there's a very small number of software companies. The largest in the world might have been Cullinet, might have been $100 million. And here's Cognos, Quasar at the time, having innovated around reporting what ultimately became business intelligence. I think Mike Potter, who was really the brains behind the whole thing back then, risk taker, visionary, entrepreneur, saw an opportunity to build a software company. There were a lot of doubters, I think. And here we went public in 1986 and really started on really quite a roll. So I guess when I look back on it, I think about having to explain to people what software was. My mother thought it was the stuff you put leftovers in the fridge. I mean, it was really, software was new. People didn't understand what it was. It's hard to imagine that now, 30, 35 years later when, software is running the world. But back then, this was a whole new thing. And so I think back to sort of the disruption that we started way back then. We were on the TSX at the time in 1986, struggling to explain to people, how we could, drive profit and drive growth and what it all meant. And so I think the team back then were pretty innovative and pretty disruptive, just like today's disruptors are, just in different context.
Yeah, and can you talk more about that context? Because I think it's really interesting. Your career was during a period of time where, as you say, software went from kind of this really difficult to explain thing to being proliferated throughout the world, and where maybe initially having a career in high tech wasn't really a thing that people aspired to do, to being,
well, not just
this
a
huge
career,
employer.
not just being in high tech. I mean, keep in mind, Ottawa was a telecom city.
Yeah.
So here's this, we have Mitel, we have Newbridge, and Cognos, we're talking about business intelligence and democratizing data. And, before data was readily available to people in a big way like it is today at your fingertips, right? And so, it was a very significant transition through, I'll say the economic malaise of the late 80s and early 90s. I remember one financial analyst, it's kind of prescient to think back to a financial analyst during a time just before we went public in the US, and the markets went south on everybody. I think they called it stagflation at the time. And this analyst in the US said, no one is going to get in the way of the automation / digitization of the economy. I mean, that's like late 80s, early 90s, right? And what have we seen happen? We've just seen that, prolific digitization, automation of everything we do, and it's made software prolific. Everybody knows what software, no one doesn't know what software is, right? And now you get, all the way to today, we've got COVID, and the digital economy has accelerated by 10 years, overnight, literally overnight, and it's a permanent change. And so, when we used to, be out there telling people, one, it was all about the software, not the hardware. That was like the 1980s kind of mantra. And then in the 90s, we had to tell people it was all about the data. It wasn't about, the automation. It was actually about the data. The intelligence is in the data. And then in the early 2000s, with the advent of the internet and big data, and now AI, where it's just second nature to everybody that the value of what you learn, what you can do with your customers, what you do with your people, how you can make the world a better place is actually in the data. And so, it gives me a little bit of pride to have been part of that story. It wasn't me, it was thousands of people out at Riverside Drive that were, innovating around this whole concept. But I feel kind of proud to have been part of that. What we were kind of zealots and revolutionaries for is now second nature. I mean, that's kind of interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
You were on the cutting edge of all of that.
Yeah, we were actually. Yeah.
Can you describe the company you walked into versus the company that you left after a couple of years post the sale to IBM for billions of dollars?
When you say the company, do you mean IBM or?
No, I mean the company
Cognos.
you walked into at the beginning of your career. Just, how many people were there, what the dynamics were like versus the $5 billion
well, I think
company you sold.
when I walked into Cognos, it was about $10 million of revenue, Canadian dollars. 10, 15 maybe, 2 or 3 of software. $2 or $3 million. This is 1982. I mean, I might have those numbers off by a little bit, but not a lot. And when we sold IBM, it was the first $1 billion software company in Canada in 2008. In 1984, there were a couple hundred people, and most of them were consultants. And Mike Potter had sort of designated this software development group under a guy named Bob Minns, a name that most people in Ottawa don't know, but who was really the sort of the innovative software guy behind the whole thing. So a very small group of, band of zealots that innovated on this thing. And when we sold IBM, we had 1,000 developers. We were world thought leaders in the area of innovation, along with, a couple other companies that sort of led the move of business intelligence and big data. We had offices in 40 countries around the world. It was just a huge change. I mean, for me personally, I joined the company as a manager of Canadian accounting. So, I walked into literally an office with all these blue, binders with blue lined paper with, ledgers and stuff. And so to me, in 1984, when I walked into Cognos, it was just a bunch of blue binders. I didn't know much about software myself. But when we were sold to IBM, I think I had kind of gained a little bit of knowledge about the whole software world.
So let's talk about your brother Bernie for a moment.
Yeah.
This award is all about you.
Yeah.
It's not about Bernie.
Happy to share it with my whole family.
Yeah, but he had his moment too. He was our CEO of the year.
Yeah, of course he was.
A couple of years ago,
Yeah.
a well-deserving recipient.
Yeah.
But he actually plays. I mean, I've always found it fascinating that the two of you ended up as prominent CEOs in Ottawa.
Yeah.
But he actually played a role in you starting at Cognos, right?
Yeah. Well, Bernie introduced me to Cognos as a junior accountant at Deloitte's, and Bernie introduced me to the controller at Quasar at the time, soon to be Cognos. Recommended me for the job. I got the job, and the rest is history. So I always credit some of whatever success you might say that I've had to Bernie. And throughout our careers, either him calling me or me calling him, we were always in similar situations. Finance guys and CEOs, heavily involved in the business community, heavily involved in philanthropy locally. If I had an issue, he was, first guy on my speed dial to talk about, common sense issues. He might not have known the Cognos business, but he had a lot of common sense, and so he could help me bring that to particular issues. As we've gotten older, we've begun to look more the same. So around town, people confuse us for each other. People call me Bernie. I just say, oh, yeah, everything's great. But I will tell you, Mark, when Bernie was a high-profile local guy at the Senators, we were both at the Hunt Club, and people would come up to me and ask me for tickets to games, and I just tell them to call my secretary, and I think Bernie's secretary got a lot of calls on that. So no, he's been important.
Yeah.
Well, you know, my whole family has, you know, been very supportive of, you know, what I've done. So Bernie just happens to be, you know, in the business community, we happen to be very close.
You've also, as you just mentioned, you've really invested in this community, your time, your money, your energy. Tell me why you believe in Ottawa and what you think the potential for our business community is in particular.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love Ottawa. I've grown up, and I was born in Halifax, but moved to Ottawa at a very young age. You know, benefited from the schools, I've benefited from the hospitals, I've benefited from the libraries. So you know, I just think it's important to be part of whatever we're going to grow this city into, and it's grown into a great, vibrant city. So my involvement in the city is probably on 3 levels. You know, I spend a lot of time at Ottawa U. We have a program there in my father-in-law's name, the Dom Herrick Entrepreneurial Program, to try and spark entrepreneurism within the community. Not just entrepreneurs who are going to start businesses, but people will go into business and be entrepreneurs in that context. And I think, you know, I've been very happy with the outcome of that. We've been involved in the hospital. But I really want to see Ottawa stay on the technology map, lead the technology map. I think it's a great community to bring employees to. I mean, I spent 20 years attracting people to Ottawa. For the green spaces, the outdoor opportunities, the style of life, the schools. So, you know, I'm very fortunate to have been invited to join the board of Shopify back in 2015, which has just taken it to a whole nother level in terms of the community. And I spent a lot of time with local CEOs, either as an investor or a mentor, when they ask if there's anything I can do. I mean, I'm getting a little bit older now, but you know, some of the problems they've got, you know, I've seen kind of over the years, and I can help with. So I'm trying to help keep Ottawa on the map the extent I can as it relates. And we're going to need more new companies. I mean, Shopify has given this unbelievable, you know, burst of energy to the city and recognition to the city. I think a sense of possibility with disruption, the way that Shopify has led this fundamental disruption in the area of e-commerce, but really in the whole area of retail. And I think there's lots of opportunities for that for other companies to do that. And so I think it's really important for me to stay involved in the local community as long as I can, and as long as I can contribute, and as long as people want to hear what I have to say.
And what do you think we need to do to create more success stories in Ottawa? What are some of the elements we need to make that happen?
Look, we got great schools. I think those schools have to align their visions and their output in the way of human capital to great engineers. I mean, it all starts with engineering. All these companies start with great engineering, and then somehow they apply that great engineering to some market idea, and away it goes. It's more these days you can start from other disciplines, given that so many things are being disrupted, but I think it all starts with engineering and starts with the technology. I just have always believed that. That's the ongoing differentiator in these opportunities. So I think, you know, both Ottawa U, Carleton, Algonquin aligning their programs to meet the needs of Shopify, to meet the needs of the other companies here in town. You know, keeping in mind with COVID, you know, all these companies can now hire globally. So our talent needs to be, we need, you know, what we call beta and alpha talent. And to get that beta and alpha talent out of our universities, we need the best programs possible. And so I think that's probably number one on the list. Number two, I mean, this is a community where you can work and live. And people, I think for the next, you know, foreseeable future, given what COVID's done to work at home, work from away, you know, this community offers so much that's so close that it's a great magnet, I think, for people to come and be able to go to the office 2 days a week and work in the Gatineau Hills or, you know, in the big Rideau system, or, you know, for 2 or 3 days. And so, you know, continuing to, you know, exploit the green spaces in town might not sound like a business issue, but for me is a quality of life issue that leads to people coming here to work. So those are a couple things I'd say.
So you've been able to observe Shopify as a board member for the last 5 years. Everybody knows what they do and knows a lot about the ways that they do it, and there's just such a great kind of entrepreneurial spirit to that company, a swagger. But can you provide some insight into how they've become successful, what the recipe was there that worked so well?
They're fundamentally disruptors. They just don't. They don't assume things should be done the way people have been doing it forever. There's very unique ways that Shopify has built their technology, gone to market. Some unorthodox. I mean, when I joined the company, I just thought I'd get in there and be able to help them do this differently or that differently. And I get in there and realized that they had built these systems that were different but could scale, were different but could be effective. And so my job wasn't really change this, change that. It was more, boy, how can you leverage that? So I think they've been disruptors at the core. I think Toby is a disruptor. That's the first thing. Second thing that is really quite striking for a company of that size is how those executives have scaled. I mean, if you look at the executives of that company, from Harley to Toby Shannon to Brittany Forsyth to Jean JML, Jean-Michel Lemieux. I mean, these guys have scaled from zero to whatever the analysts have it at this year, somewhere between $2 and $3 billion. I mean, again, you would expect, okay, we'd be on the third round of a management team, and
right.
So I've been hugely the people that Toby has surrounded himself with, and lastly, and maybe the most important thing, they're engineering focused. Toby is engineering focused, tech focused. Again, if you look at these companies that scale to that size, they have rewritten their core product 2 or 3 times to match the needs of scale, and not a Shopify. They invested in the core technology. They continue to build out that core technology. So they're disruptors. They're great executives that have scaled really well, and they're really focused on great technology. And you put that around a market opportunity that nobody believed in really but them. I mean, the podcast Toby did at How I Made This, which is a PBS podcast, maybe you've heard it.
Oh yeah.
It's really great about entrepreneurs. And when Toby went to Silicon Valley, I mean, one of the biggest venture capitalists in the U.S., said he thought your market size was 40,000 merchants, or it was some small number. Well, we're at 1.5 million merchants now. So Toby was able to see that. I don't know if he saw 1.5 million at that time, but he certainly saw this huge opportunity to disrupt, and continues to disrupt to this day. So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah. And something you said there that I think is part of everything you described. It's almost like they were playing a long game the whole time too, right? They were thinking long term.
Toby would say to you, our results of today represent the work we did 3 or 4 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago. And Harley would probably say the same thing. And Harley is the guy that we see mostly, talking to the media and talking to the financial community. The work we're doing today is going to benefit us 2 or 3 years out. So, I mean, Toby is completely respectful of the public markets, but he doesn't run the company for the public markets. He's running the company for an opportunity that he sees in the future, and the board is fully supportive of that. So yeah, they play the long game for sure. I mean, to have sort of spent the years that we have investing, in the acquisition of this significant merchant base took a lot of discipline. And so yeah, really focused on the future.
So Rob, what does this Lifetime Achievement Award mean to you personally?
Well, I'm humbled, Mark, to be frank with you. I mean, I see the list. I mean, I'm an Ottawa guy. I know all these people that have gotten these awards in the past, from, Jim Durrell, great mayor, Roger Greenberg, a great city, Billy Shirley Westeinda, Jack Kitts at the hospital, who, I was on the board of the foundation when Jack joined the hospital as the CEO. Mike Potter, I don't think I'd ever consider myself part of that group, so I'm humbled in the first instance, to be frank with you. But that being said, I love the city. As I said earlier, I feel like I did make some contribution, along with a lot of other people. I mean, it wasn't me on my own. There's a lot of other people, but I feel like I did make a contribution, and so I'm just really proud of my family's here. My wife grew up in Ottawa. My kids are Ottawa people. It just makes me feel good, I guess, that I've been able to contribute.
Well, it's very well deserved. I'm sorry that we can't honor you in the normal fashion with a big dinner.
I'll have a few drinks on the 25th myself, don't worry.
But we'll do that another time.
Yeah.
Congratulations again, Rob. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark.